sports. It's in the game.
Much earlier than last year, here we are returning for the Portuguese Grand Prix and returning to the Circuit Portimao for round 3 this time of the Formula 1 2021 season. And it became very much a drivers and fans favourite despite not being Estoril, and there's very strong rumours that Portimao could be trying to secure its future in Formula 1 for the foreseeable future. We will keep you posted. 2.8 miles, 2 DRS zones, 50 corners, and a lot of undulation changes. This circuit is the very definition of a roller coaster ride in Formula 1. While the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix turned out to be a race of attrition with many front wings being lost over the course of the race, a race which Valtteri Bottas dominated from the front after taking the initiative early on. He also took the lead in the Drivers' Championship after grabbing a vital extra point for the fastest lap, and now is 1 point clear of Hamilton. But the man of the season so far is Sergio Perez, up there in 3rd position. Bear in mind, however, that Max Verstappen did suffer an engine failure in Imola, a very rare event during the Red Bull-Honda partnership so far. Max Verstappen has been pretty much at the front of the grid from the start, but not been able to convert those into getting ahead of Mercedes. And that was very much the case today, as we take a look at the starting grid for the Portuguese Grand Prix. Max Verstappen scored his 2nd pole in 3 races and will be hoping to convert this one into a race win. Less than a tenth once again separated him from Lewis Hamilton on the front row. Sergio Perez got ahead of Valtteri Bottas once again on the 2nd row, while on row 3 it's Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris once again. 7th and 8th goes to Carlos Sainz and his hero Fernando Alonso. Completed the top 10 was Sebastian Vettel and Esteban Ocon, as both Alpines got into Q3 for the first time this season. At the Daniel Ricciardo's expense, there was a surprise elimination out of Q2 alongside Lance Stroll in row 6. They're ahead of the AlphaTauri duo of Tsunoda and Gasly. Aiden Jackson got his HAAS into Q2 for the 2nd time in 3 races ahead of George Russell. Both Alfa Romeos get ahead of the penultimate last row of the grid, which is headed by Mick Schumacher and finished by Nicholas Latifi. The 3rd time in a row that Aiden Jackson has beaten Mick Schumacher in qualifying, but of course Schumacher's had the better of Jackson in the races. Now, to be fair to Jackson in Bahrain, he had a damaged car and was very much playing a very good team game with Schumacher in Bahrain to finish 14th, 15th ahead of Alonso and Raikkonen. But in Emilia-Romagna, Jackson struggled, finishing towards the back, although he did make a couple of places with late front wing changes late on, but was lapped for the first time in his racing career, really proving that this kid is fast, and he proved that at Portimao over the course of the weekend, because Jackson has looked really dialed in at this circuit, and the 15th place really proved how much that was the case, getting his HAAS into Q2 for the 2nd time in 3 races. Whereas Mick Schumacher's not really, as we said, had the legs of Jackson in qualifying, he's been better in the races. I expect Jackson to be ahead of Schumacher in this race though, because as we said, Jackson has looked completely dialed into this circuit. And he's going to be starting this race on the medium tyres, as HAAS once again going from mediums to the hards, really just to make it to the end of the race. HAAS really saying there's no real point putting Jackson and Schumacher on the softs at any point during the race, as they are the slowest car on the grid. Well, they probably are the worst in terms of performance, that is. They are probably the slowest on the grid as well. We know that the HAAS is not going to be upgraded at all over the course of the season. But Jackson is really making the best of what he has, which is a Schumacher-like trait, believe it or not. Meanwhile, in the middle of the pack, we've got Tsunoda and Gasly on the soft tyres, we've got Jackson on the mediums, we've got George Russell on the hards and the Williams. And very much the midfield battle is very close this year, but bear in mind, for everyone from length down can select any tyres they want, whereas the top 10 have to start the race on tyres they set their fastest Q2 lap on. And they've already made their way to the front of the grid, and they'll be hoping that the back of the grid forms up quickly. They don't want to be there any longer than necessary, as these engines do kind of tick over. And we haven't had really any stalls on the grid in the last few years. Very much more complicated but less start line problems is the kind of mantra for these V6 cars. So here come the fire red lights ahead of the drivers, the green flag at the back. Round 3 of the Formula 1 2021 season. It is lights out, and away we go for the Portuguese Grand Prix. And Lewis Hamilton has had a great start, and he already takes the lead from Max Verstappen. Bottas is going down the inside as he's had a great start as well. He already got ahead of Perez rather, and he's also alongside Verstappen going into turn 2. And the Mercedes have both taken the lead and second place throughout the first 2 corners. In the reverse to what happened to Bahrain, it's Mercedes that have had the great start, and Red Bulls that have had a terrible start, with Max going behind Bottas already and Perez as well. He started behind both of them on the grid as Jackson looks to Williams and we got a lost front wing. Bang! Front wing gone from Antonio Giovinazzi. I think he hit Raikkonen. I'm not entirely sure. I think it could be Latifi. I think Jackson was going down the inside of George Russell there as well at some point, but we already have a lost front wing for Antonio Giovinazzi, and that's another front wing for Alfa Romeo to replace. They already lost one in the case of Kimi Raikkonen in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, as we got a bit of a traffic jam here from Daniel Ricciardo, who's holding people up. There's Gasly going down the inside. Tsunoda just moving up to 11th place, and Ricciardo's holding people up, and there goes Jackson down the inside of Lance Stroll. And is he going to get them? No, not quite. Stroll's going to try and hang it round, but Jackson's going to stick it round the outside. Ricciardo gets in his way. Is Jackson going to go around them? Yes, he is. Aiden Jackson, what a move. What a spectacular move by Aiden Jackson. What's wrong with Ricciardo? Has he got power problem perhaps? Because he's very slow. He's already dropped to P14 and he's coming into the pits to see what there is damage to his car. Maybe there is damage to his car. Maybe Daniel Ricciardo has front wing damage as well. I can't really see it on that camera, but once again McLaren ruined their own race at the start. It is a front wing change for Daniel Ricciardo, so already they haven't even started the race and we have 2 lost front wings, or a damaged one in Ricciardo's case, and a lost one completely from Antonio Giovinazzi. So the curse of the front wings has carried over to the Portuguese Grand Prix, it seems like. Meanwhile, at the front, Lewis Hamilton, trademark start, got ahead of Verstappen, but it was Valtteri Bottas that won the most by passing both Red Bulls. And look at this start from Bottas. It's a very slow one from Verstappen. Everyone at the top 10's on the medium tyres, and pretty much status quo there. Obviously, the fastest car on the grid would do that. But it was Verstappen that got the worst start out of the top 4, and that was why Bottas had been able to move into second place here. And pretty much the reverse of Imola, it's Lewis Hamilton that now leads from Bottas. Let's see this start from Verstappen. And yeah, he does struggle. I don't think he really got enough revs in the engine. And that would be why he started slow. It wasn't really too many revs, it was too low revs. And he just never looked comfortable with his car. And he obviously had to make way for Bottas as well. So Max Verstappen already being the massive loser, losing his positional advantage on pole position. Look at this start from Lewis Hamilton. Absolute rocket ship. Vintage Mercedes, rocket ship from Lewis Hamilton, takes the lead at the start. In the reverse to Bahrain, where the Mercedes had very much a bad start, they've had a good one here. Now, this is why Ricciardo is going into the pits with front wing damage. Let's see this on the replay. He taps Tsunoda, and there goes his front wing end plate, and that's why he will be going to the pits. For Giovinazzi, he had it much worse. Let's see this. He was going down the inside of the TV, smacked his front wing off completely. In fact, Giovinazzi, very lucky not to be a retirement there, because his wheel took a hard hit. And here is the move Jackson made on Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll. And we've got team radio incoming in just a second. And Jackson just hugging that corner effortlessly. It's almost like the HAAS is a lot better than probably first giving credit. Certainly here it looks very hooked up.
Fantastic double move there, Aiden. You're up to P13 now, buddy. Repeat, P13. You're doing great. Good job.
Good encouragement there from Jackson's race engineer. Up to P13 in the HAAS. A brilliant double move on Stroll and Ricciardo. To be fair, Ricciardo was nursing his car back to the pits with a front wing, but Jackson once again showing that overtaking prowess in his very early career years. He did that a lot in F2. He passed a lot of drivers, and now he's doing it in Formula 1 on the worst car of the grid. That's got to be worth a lot to the HAAS team, having a driver like Aiden Jackson. Being very, very bold, but very, very clean with his overtakes as well. You can see where he's starting to get in the comparisons to Max Verstappen in the way he's been greatly defending and overtaking over the course of the first 3 races. It's Fernando Alonso up into P7. He started P8 on the grid, so he's got ahead of Sainz in the first couple of laps. And your race order, top 10, Lewis Hamilton leading from Valtteri Bottas and Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso getting ahead of Sainz, Esteban Ocon got ahead of Sebastian Vettel as well. And that is your top 10. Further down we've got Ricciardo and Giovinazzi at the back. We've got Aiden Jackson with lofty heights in P13. George Russell down in P15. He'll make 2 places. He actually lost a place somewhere. I'm not sure that was 2. I think it might have been. I'm not sure where George Russell was showing his P15. That's unusual. He's lost a place somewhere because he started P. No, he's gained. He gained the place from Ricciardo and Giovinazzi. But oh my word! With Bottas has stopped. Bottas has stopped. I was so kind of working that out, and Valtteri Bottas has stopped on the track. It's a retirement for a Mercedes. Oh my word! First retirement from a Mercedes this season, and it's once again the number 2 driver that has all the bad luck. In the case of Valtteri Bottas, he is out of this race, and well, that's very much a culture shock for Mercedes. Normally the bulletproof engine on the grid, but it was lap 4. It's lap 4 and already Bottas is retired from this race, and that was worst case scenario now, because that gives Max Verstappen clean air for a bit to try and chase down Lewis Hamilton. Both the leaders are on the medium tyres, so they're pretty much going to be stopping on the same lap as each other more or less. And well, that's really shook things up. That's probably why George was showing as a place higher than usual, although he is still P14, so he's beaten someone. At the start it would be Ricciardo, wouldn't it? It probably would be Ricciardo because he was ahead of Giovinazzi on the grid, so we've worked that out. Anyway, new race order then. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton still leads, this time from Verstappen and Perez, as Bottas has dropped out. That puts Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc rather, into P4, and to be fair, Charles is holding on to the leaders. That Ferrari package seems very much upgraded from 2020. It's very much improved, as it's really hanging with the race leaders early on in the race anyway, as we enter lap 5, and now everyone moves up a spot, so that puts Yuki Tsunoda in the points once again for AlphaTauri, with Ricciardo and Giovinazzi having to make up all the time they lost in those early pit stops. I didn't really see what tyres they'd put on, probably the softs to try and make up some of the gap. But once again, McLaren lose positions at the start of the race. It probably could have been handled by Ricciardo, that minor damage, but as we said in Imola, it's very much front downforce centric in Formula 1 these days. You need all the downforce you can get, so that's why Ricciardo probably felt the need to change his front wing. So it's Tsunoda ahead of Gasly then, for the first time this season. Gasly's pretty much had the upper hand on Tsunoda throughout most of the season. And now he's Tsunoda beating Gasly for the first time in qualifying this season. Gasly having to get out of the throttle there in the final corner. He can pretty much take that almost flat, say if you're in a Mercedes or a Red Bull that's stuck to the track. Other ones probably have to lift off just a tiny bit. There's going to be no real gains here because Tsunoda's going to have DRS ahead of him, as we're going to move here from Carlos Sainz on Fernando Alonso. So Sainz now back ahead of Alonso in the Alpine, as we said, Ferrari looking much an improved package over last year, finishing consistently in the top 5, and now they are running 4th and 6th with Lando Norris in the middle of a Ferrari sandwich up there in P5. As we now look at George Russell chasing down Kimi Raikkonen and Aiden Jackson ahead, as Stroll had beaten Jackson during that commotion with Bottas. Stroll had actually overtaken Jackson at that point, so poor Aiden has lost out, but he made a great start, and once again he's kind of making inroads in a car that really shouldn't deserve to be there, and if that makes any sense. But he is making the best of it, isn't he? And as we said in Bahrain, Williams, or as the rumour's been going round since Jackson's signing, that Mercedes could be putting him in that Williams car should George Russell be promoted. So I don't think this is going to be the end of the career of Aiden Jackson. I think Mercedes are going to have a serious say in where this kid goes. And let me tell you, based on the evidence of the first 3 races, they have picked up an absolute gem. This kid is mighty, or as Josh Revel, the YouTuber, would say, mustard. This kid is quick, but unfortunately the car is not, and that's why he's been left behind from those ahead of him. But my goodness, this kid has looked dialed in all weekend long here at Portimao, despite this being a track he's never been to before, and that's even more impressive. Now, at the front here, we've got a very interesting story, because Max Verstappen is actually closing in on Lewis Hamilton, and we're going to get our first big battle this season between the 2 main championship contenders. Now, Max falling out of favour in points for a bit after that retire at the Emilia Romagna race, and like we said, Sergio Perez being the man of the moment in the season so far. But now, Max Verstappen is closing on Lewis Hamilton. It looks like sooner or later we're going to get our first battle between these two this season. In the last couple of races there have been kind of flyaways from Mercedes, but this time Max is looking much closer and getting the aid of DRS as well. But Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes car in particular has been mighty in a straight line, and I think that's why they're winning out against Red Bull at power tracks like this. Now, this isn't really a power track as safe Bahrain, but that last corner leading onto the start-finish straight is going to be Mercedes Haven for this Grand Prix. And no, that's Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris, and Charles Leclerc is still hanging with Sergio Perez, and I think that's really a testament to the improvements Ferrari have made over 2020. Now, some would say that's probably not too difficult because 2020 was disastrous for Ferrari, but even still, you know, Charles Leclerc really proving the investment well in the Ferrari team. And will he have a new teammate in a couple of years, with Mick Schumacher being possibly courted as a Ferrari future drive in a couple of years' time? That's why Sainz needs to put in these performances he has been doing over the course of the year so far, because he's looking behind him at the likes of Mick Schumacher and possibly Robert Schwartzman and Christian Lundgaard and Marcus Armstrong, rather, just to name a couple for him. F2 already kicking off with, I think, Guan Yu Zhou leading the championship at the moment after the early skirmishes in a much improved Dams car, I believe. But obviously Guan Yu Zhou is being in the Renault Driver Academy, so he'll be looked at by Alpine, probably most likely. And here we are then with obviously Leclerc sticking with Perez, which is very impressive for Ferrari considering last season. Now we're on board with the Alfa Romeo here of Kimi Raikkonen as he's closing in on hotshot rookie Aiden Jackson, who's probably starting to struggle on those tyres a little bit as we are approaching the first pit stop windows around that 12 or 13. And here we go down the straight, not going to be close enough with DRS assistance there, Kimi Raikkonen. And he'll be probably glad to see the back of Aiden Jackson if he can get past him, because he really struggled in Bahrain to pass him, as did Fernando Alonso. Because this kid is mighty. As we approach the 10th lap of the race, probably about a third or so distance into this race, Raikkonen is catching Aiden Jackson in the HAAS at the moment. The HAAS and Alfa Romeos do have the most recent Ferrari engines in those cars, so it's going to be a pretty interesting fight. But HAAS's car overall is not where it should be. Carlos Sainz has just passed Charles Leclerc, but that's why. Charles Leclerc is in the pits going on to another set of soft tyres. That's an interesting call by Ferrari. He's beaten Norris out of the pits. Let's see if Charles can make that work. He has shown good pace to keep with Perez over the course of the race so far. So maybe that could be a good decision by Ferrari. We'll have to see how it pans out later on. Meanwhile, This is probably the most interesting battle on the track. It's Aiden Jackson up in P12, but of course, likes of Alonso ahead of him have pitted, and that'll be why he's sitting there at the moment. Daniel Ricciardo and Antonio Giovinazzi not really making the gauge you'd expect, although Ricciardo, to be fair, is now closing in on Mick Schumacher ahead of him at the moment. And this man, Lewis Hamilton, looks to probably have control at the front, but Max Verstappen is right there to pounce should he make a mistake, although that's going to be very unlikely for Lewis Hamilton to make a mistake. He does not make a mistake in that car. And now we've got Max with DRS on board, and it's not going to benefit him too much, as he is still behind going to turns 1 and 2. So Max Verstappen once again losing out at the start. Seems to be Red Bull's Achilles heel over the last couple of races. As Carlos Sainz now pits, and Ferrari going with the soft tyres on Sainz's car as well. So it looks like Ferrari are trying to have track position by means of being on the fastest tyres. And out comes Sainz, and there's Jackson. Is he going to try and move on Sainz that he did in Bahrain? Unfortunately, no, he's a bit too far behind this time, but it was a sensational piece of driving there by the Yuki. He was in the middle of a Giovinazzi and Sainz kind of sandwich, if you like. It's very similar here, except it's Kimi Raikkonen in the Alfa Romeo that's chasing at the moment. We've got, is that Alonso and Russell closing in on them, actually. So we can have very much a repeat of Bahrain, as in some cases here. And Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen going on for another lap, trying to eke out their tyres. They've got the gap over Perez in a sense. Perez is 3 seconds down on Verstappen, with Vettel being about, I think that's either 10 or 18 seconds behind, although it's redundant now because Sebastian Vettel is coming into the pits for his mandatory tyre stopping. In a dry race, you must use 2 of the 3 available compounds of tyres, and Verstappen is doing the minimum requirement. So both Ferraris will have to stop again because of that rule. They're probably hoping for rain, as Charles Leclerc going down the inside. Lance Stroll, there's Lando Norris going around the outside of Lance Stroll. Is he going to get Leclerc as well? He is, you know. Brilliant move by Lando Norris. Fantastic move around the outside of Stroll and Leclerc. Brilliant move by the young Brit. Lando Norris can do his own forms of overtaking. It's not just Jackson. Lando Norris can overtake too. And brilliant move there by Norris to get ahead of Leclerc. And that'll be crucial for later, because he'd been behind Leclerc in the first stint. So that will be absolutely crucial for Lando Norris later. Could that lead to a podium maybe with Valtteri Bottas out of this race? Can Norris try and catch Perez and pass him for a another podium? Lando Norris earning his first one last season. Meanwhile at the front we've got Verstappen still trying to close in on Hamilton. These two are trading fastest laps at this point at the moment. So Max is definitely much closer to Lewis this weekend. But he needs to sort those starts out, doesn't he? As Pierre Gasly comes into the pits, allowing Yuki Tsunoda some clean air. But to be fair, Tsunoda is probably going to be coming in sooner or later. And we've got Lance Stroll who passed Jackson. No, it's going to be Alonso that does pass Jackson though, because Stroll's already passed him. Alonso down the inside, DRS assisted, and nothing Aiden Jackson can do this time. He hasn't got anyone in front of him like he did in Bahrain. He's run wide there as well. But unlike in Bahrain, where he had Schumacher pulling him along, he's not got no such luxury this time. Fernando Alonso passes him in the Alpine. Jackson up to P9 in the race now, but of course he has to pit for another set of tyres as well. Meanwhile, we've got Mick Schumacher closing in on Lance Stroll here. Interesting. And Mick Schumacher also is on the medium tyres, so HAAS really don't see any benefit being on the softest compounded tyres during the race. They want to use the mediums and the hard tyres during the course of the Grand Prix. They haven't even raced on the soft tyres yet. Even Jackson and Imola didn't do that. So Aiden Jackson running in a superb P9 at the moment. Just absolutely wonderful to see a young rookie fighting amongst the best and doing his best. And even though he might ultimately lose out due to car performance, there's no such thing as lacking of performance from Aiden Jackson's part at the moment. And it looks like he's going to have a case of deja vu as another Alpine. He's probably going to look to fly past him. It's Esteban Ocon. Is he going to pull out to the inside? No. Jackson is going to have just enough to hold him off. Let's go into turn 2, and he's going to keep ahead. So Aiden Jackson able to keep it ahead of Ocon on that occasion. As we go down this first DRS zone on the track officially. And still no gain there from Esteban Ocon passing Jackson. So the HAAS has got really good straight line speed, to be fair. It's just in the corners where Jackson and Schumacher have struggled with the car overall. But here goes Esteban Ocon down the inside. And Jackson, did he hit him there? I don't think so. But Jackson really feeling his oldest position. He's really giving no quarter, is he, Aiden Jackson? As Verstappen and Hamilton both pitted on the same lap. And as you can see, Hamilton just exiting ahead of Verstappen. Have they both put the hard tyres on those cars? So we're getting a bit of an Aiden Jackson traffic jam, although I think the HAAS crew might be in the pits to receive him on this lap. He's gone quite far, Aiden Jackson, to be fair. 14 laps on those tyres, and he's coming in. And so that means Schumacher's going longer than Jackson then. That means. I think there's every expectation that Jackson will go onto the hard compound tyres to get to the end of the race. Indeed he does. And he's going to drop behind Latifi, Schumacher, Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, I think. And there's Raikkonen. So no, he didn't beat out Raikkonen, but he did beat Giovinazzi, although Giovinazzi's been running the back since lap 1 after losing his front wing completely in a collision with, I think it was Russell, as Sergio Perez, who inherited the race lead, is now coming into the pits. He's got 18 seconds over Hamilton and Verstappen, which is not going to be enough to secure the lead. Will he even get ahead of Lando Norris? Because Norris is showing us a second behind Verstappen. I think Perez could be in trouble from Lando Norris. He is going to be. Sergio Perez is losing out big time here. He's dropped behind Leclerc as well. So Perez, who was ahead of Norris and Leclerc, not by much, going into the stops. Both Norris and Leclerc have now jumped him, and that means Lando Norris is now in P3 ahead of Leclerc, and that's going to be the most interesting battle on the track then. Wow, what happened to Sergio Perez? He did not have a good pre-stop stint there, and he's lost 2 places as a result, and this race has just got bad to worse for Red Bull in a sense, unless Max Verstappen could pass Lewis Hamilton at any point during the Grand Prix. So your top 10 then, after the first round of stops, Lewis Hamilton from Max Verstappen, Lando Norris now in P3 ahead of Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz, both Alpines of Alonso and Esteban Ocon, Sebastian Vettel and Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda on for yet another point in his F1 career. Fernando Alonso yet again doing a very sterling job in P7, and Fernando Alonso is getting it done on his return to Formula 1. He's certainly made the right decision to come back in a period of transition for Alpine, being rebranded this year, and obviously the 2022 cars the next. And Perez has it all to do now, and he started ahead of a Mercedes. Now he's behind both a Ferrari and a McLaren. I think the Ferrari will be more frustrating than the McLaren, because Ferrari, as we said, had a very tumultuous time last season. They really have got it together at Ferrari so far this year, though. Charles Leclerc running in P4, Sainz running in P6, and being very consistent point scorers, Ferrari. They are in a battle with McLaren for third for the constructors this season, but it's Lando Norris that leads them at the moment, up in P3. as we are on lap 17 of this Grand Prix, and it's pretty much sailed down a bit now. And but it's going to be probably about to the end of the front, because Max Verstappen is still within a second of Lewis Hamilton, meaning he will get the DRS zone, and those two have traded fastest laps, and there's just absolutely nothing to separate them at the moment. And we've been waiting for this battle all season long between Hamilton and Verstappen. In Bahrain, Hamilton ran away after getting the lead, and in Imola, Valtteri Bottas did the same, and Verstappen had an engine failure. So there'll be one less PU unit that Max will have, and that might come back to haunt him later in the season when he may have to take some engine penalties. It's very close to Verstappen here as Norris and Leclerc put a lap on Antonio Giovinazzi, who's not having the best of times. He's barely making inroads on Mick Schumacher. We've had George Russell passing someone, or is it Lance Stroll passing Daniel Ricciardo? In fact, I think Daniel Ricciardo's in the pit, and that wouldn't surprise me, because Ricciardo probably put the soft tyres on when he had to change the front wing at the start of the race. And Verstappen and Hamilton, this is going to be the battle for the lead. This is going to probably go on for some time. Max needs to find a way through. He's damaging his tyres. Lewis has the luxury of being out in front, as Sergio Perez is coming up to lap Giovinazzi. He's not really making much inroads on Leclerc and Norris ahead though, is he? Sergio Perez. He may have been the man of the season, as we said at the top of the show, but today he's not looked altogether on it. Lost out to Bottas at the start. Now that's Charles Leclerc there with DRS on the McLaren, but nothing doing there. Perez is struggling to put a lap on Giovinazzi at the moment. I wonder if Perez is carrying a problem, because he should be waltzing past the Alfa Romeo. No disrespect to Alfa Romeo or Giovinazzi. And Daniel Ricciardo has passed Aiden Jackson recently as well. He's making his way back through the field. And this scrap is still going on between the AlphaTauri boys. They've been stuck together like glue the whole race long. They even started together on the same road, the grid. In fact, there is quite a battle brewing for 7th. Fernando Alonso, or is it 8th with Esteban Ocon, followed by Vettel and the two AlphaTauri. So it might be for 8th, as Alonso is about 8 seconds in front of Ocon at this very moment. And here is the battle for the final podium spot. Charles Leclerc chasing down Lando Norris. Looks like Norris is going to have, or Leclerc rather, is going to have DRS, as the McLaren has lost the effect of DRS on the Red Bull, as he's over a second behind him now. Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc coming to the pits together, and I think, unless Ferrari can get a really good fast stop out of this, nope, it's going to be as you were. Charles Leclerc then, Carlos Sainz, my apologies, is going to be now sitting in P4 behind the kind of usual suspects aside from Bottas, who's out of the race. It's really a decent race for Ferrari at the moment. And Fernando Alonso is pitted as well on lap 20. Some of these drivers have actually gone much longer than their other stops, unless they're stopping twice. Not one to go now. Just 13 laps to go. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton still leading the way, and still Hamilton is soaking up the pressure. The man behind him, known as one of the greatest overtakers on this grid, but Lewis Hamilton is no slouch when it comes to overtaking either. 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton soaking up the pressure from Max Verstappen behind. Going for his 8th world championship. Max going for his first. He will get it. Whether it's at Red Bull or somewhere else, it is almost a given, I guess, in some form of certainty that Max will get a world championship. It's not altogether certain, obviously. You never know. Of course, Carlos Sainz is in to go on to the mediums for the end of the race, and no doubt Charles will do the same, unless he's already pitted, of course. And Sainz has really lost out. Look at the AlphaTauris, and the AlphaTauris side by side with Sainz coming out of the pits. That's Gasly passing Tsunoda, and that has worked out horribly for Carlos Sainz. Out behind both AlphaTauris. We're getting a lot of pit stops that are winning position type pit stops at the moment. Now this is interesting. The two leaders are out in front in a world of their own, and they're coming up to Mick Schumacher in the HAAS to lap him. This could be Max Verstappen's chance. In fact, Max is very close as he activates DRS now. Is he going to make a move here, Max Verstappen? No, he's too far back. He looked a lot closer at one point there. Now he's gaining. Hamilton needs to get past Schumacher very quickly so as not to damage his tyres. Well, Sainz has already passed Tsunoda further lower down the field. And Schumacher really needs to get out of the way here, and he does so. Schumacher being a real gentleman about letting the leaders through. Max Verstappen is very, very close. There, we need to stay with the race lead. We're watching Carlos Sainz passing Gasly round the inside, but Gasly's trying to hold it round the outside. And Sainz eventually getting there, but we need to go back to the front because Max Verstappen was very close to Lewis Hamilton there. Thank you, Mr. Director. We need to go one more up, please, because we're watching the wrong man. Here we go. Back at the front. Oh, look at this. We're now approaching the DRS zone. This will be Max's best chance. He's right on the tail of Hamilton. He's going to be right there. We're on board with Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. He's going to be right on the tail of Lewis Hamilton. This could be his best chance. Going down the straight. DRS activated. Gaining. Is he going to gain enough? He's taking to the outside. And Lewis holds his position. Lewis gets a bit squirrely in turn one. Verstappen goes around the outside. Has he got him? No. Hamilton hands it in round the inside. Oh, what a move by Max Verstappen. He almost went for the late lunge down the outside. Lewis Hamilton, how did he keep control of the car back there? Because it looked to me as if Hamilton got squirrely out of turn one, in the middle of turn one. It looked like he got out of shape. So how did Lewis even keep that position? Oh my word. Max Verstappen, was that his best chance of getting past Lewis Hamilton? I'll have to wait and see. Sergio Perez has now been left behind. The leading two are in a class of their own at the front. And Max Verstappen almost getting the race lead. And so far he's just been unable to convert a pole position into a win. He's got two of them already. Remember, this man could not buy a pole before, I believe it was Hungary 2018 or 19. Max Verstappen couldn't buy a pole position. Now he's had two over the course of the season, but he's not won a race with them yet. And I don't think he's close enough this time, Max Verstappen. Although, mind you, he might be. DRS. Nope, I thought he wasn't. And Lewis Hamilton now coming up to the Williams of Nicholas Latifi to put a lap on him. Is Sergio Perez. And he's pulling off to the side. Sergio Perez is out of the race. Another Red Bull engine failure. This time for Sergio Perez. That promotes Lando Norris into the podium places. Meanwhile, George Russell is chasing down Aiden Jackson. Now, last time these two were in a battle, Jackson got hit by Russell. And it looks like he might have got another hit there. And we're going to get a replay. This is a slow motion replay. Now, what happened here? Looks like Jackson has... Russell has lost his front wing end plate. That'll be a pit stop. And, well, Jackson's on the racing line. I don't think Jackson really does anything wrong there. And, I don't think you can really lay the blame at Jackson's door. And that'll be a pit stop for Russell. Back at the front. Max Verstappen isn't close enough. Lewis Hamilton just doing a tremendous job. You would expect nothing less from Lewis Hamilton. He is a 7-time world champion for a reason. But this is the battle he has relished for so long. For so long, Hamilton has relished a battle from a title rival. And he knew probably it was going to come from Max Verstappen if it was going to come from anybody. So now, the race order with Perez dropping out of the race. It's Hamilton from Verstappen, Lando Norris, both Ferraris, Sebastian Vettel, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso getting another 2 points for Alpine, although he's dropped behind the AlphaTauris somewhere. And Lance Stroll getting a point for Aston Martin. There'll be a double points finish for Aston Martin. Look at this! Pierre Gasly is catching the Aston Martin Mercedes of Sebastian Vettel. Huh. And Gasly's on the hard tyres. That makes that impressive. I'll tell you something, Free. Pierre Gasly has really just looked on it over the last year or so. The redemption arc continues for Pierre Gasly. And put this kid in an Alpine. Alpine rumoured to have their eyes on Gasly as once again down the DRS straight. No doing for Verstappen. I think Verstappen is much better in the corners, but that straight line speed from that Works Mercedes is absolute top notch. Look at the gap that Hamilton pulls out on the straight here. Even with DRS, Max can't get anywhere near him. That's been the case over a few laps now. That straight line speed of that Mercedes is raw fast, to put it best terms, I guess. But yeah, it's very good down the straights. The Mercedes Works engine, and it's working wonders for Hamilton today. It's keeping him in the lead between himself and Verstappen. How close is... no, we thought we were coming to the DRS zone. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc, he's hanging on to Lando Norris, isn't he? But get this, these two out in front are 23 seconds clear of Lando Norris. These two are in a league of their own at the moment, trading fastest laps and trading blows. And it's Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, that is winning this battle at the moment. A titanic battle between the two main championship protagonists this season. Even though Max has fallen behind a little bit due to the retirement, he's nowhere near out of the title fight yet. We're only at round 3, of course. So a quick run down the order. Lewis Hamilton from Max Verstappen, Lando Norris from both Ferraris, Sebastian Vettel being pursued by Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri, Yuki Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll. That's your top 10. Followed by Ricciardo, who's made no improvements on 11th, although he had to stop on the first lap due to front wing damage. He's ahead of Esteban Ocon, who's dropped outside of the top 10. He started 10th. Meanwhile, we could have a change here. It's Gasly, DRS assisted down the inside of Vettel. It's hanging around turn 1, and Pierre Gasly has done it again. This boy has just come leaps and bounds since his demotion from Red Bull to AlphaTauri. He's at 1 with this car. He won last season in Monza. What a move by Gasly. And Vettel, I think he outbroke himself slightly. And Pierre Gasly now up to P6 in the AlphaTauri. So that's one change to the order. Further down, we've got Kimi Raikkonen in 13th, ahead of Aiden Jackson by 6 seconds, as Norris and Leclerc put a lap on George Russell, I think that is. By the way, Nicholas Latifi, P15 ahead of Mick Schumacher and George Russell, but don't forget George Russell hit Jackson again, and that time he had to pit. So that's why he's in P17, and last but one ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi by 4 seconds, with Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas, your 2 retirements in this race, as Verstappen and Hamilton now come up to rookie Aiden Jackson in the HAAS. He's locked up there, and is he getting out of the way? No, he's got 3 blue flag posts to negotiate before he starts getting warnings and time penalties. And he's trying to get out of the way. There he goes. He's run off the track to let Hamilton and Verstappen through, and I don't think Verstappen or Hamilton have really lost any time behind Jackson. But I think this looks as close as Mercedes Red Bull have gone. And 0.5. And this could be closer than other laps. DRS open. Here he comes. He's gaining. And he's not gaining enough. That straight line speed, that Mercedes, that is acing this win for Lewis Hamilton at the moment. Absolutely acing it. Verstappen though, really good in the corners. Really good. That Red Bull is absolutely planted to the ground. And it's such a joy to drive in the corners for Max Verstappen. They say the Red Bull is catered to Max Verstappen, and of course it is. You know, it's just common sense, really. Max Verstappen is really making the best of the machinery. We've got a titanic scrap here for third between Leclerc and Norris, who are 23 seconds behind the two leaders ahead of them. And I think they're coming up to lap Jackson as well. No, they wouldn't be coming up to lap Jackson, would they? Yes, they would. No, they're coming up to Schumacher. My apologies. Because Jackson's a far way ahead of this. And a far way ahead of Schumacher today. Although, to be fair, Schumacher is P16, but he's not really made any real inroads today. Jackson has definitely had the beating of him this weekend. And once again at the front as we approach the final few laps of this race. Max Verstappen with DRS open and just nothing doing. Mercedes is just so good down that straight. What could have been different maybe if Max had made a better start. Now Charles Leclerc going to get DRS on Norris here. DRS is actually, like Imola, DRS has not really been effective in this one. Even with two zones. Actually, I think at least in Imola we got some overtaking with DRS. We're not getting a lot of overtaking with DRS on this circuit, even with two zones. So how close is Verstappen now? 0.5. Max having to get out of the throttle there. Well, Max really struggling with the throttle application out of a couple of these corners. I think that's what's giving Lewis the edge. And he's not going to be close enough to pass him here, Max Verstappen. DRS is opened. They're coming up on the Alfa Romeo now of, I believe that's Kimi Raikkonen, because they put a lap on Aiden Jackson. At 32 laps to go of this Portuguese Grand Prix. And it's Lewis Hamilton who's to be chased home literally by Verstappen as Raikkonen gets out of the way. He wants nothing to do with it, and who can blame him? Raikkonen entering his final season of Formula 1, if rumours are to be believed. And if that is the case, maybe Aiden Jackson can get another loan to somewhere else. Alfa Romeo would definitely be a better destination for Jackson in terms of getting to wheel experience, but I feel in his first three races that Jackson's had that. So yes, we are going to have very much a merry-go-round in 2020. 2022. Daniel Ricciardo's passed Lance Stroll. He's made his way back up to the points. He was at the back of the field at the end of the first lap. So credit to Daniel Ricciardo getting into the points there. His teammate Lando Norris still holding on to third ahead of Charles Leclerc. As we watch these two, Hamilton and Verstappen in a league of their own at the front. DRS open for the Red Bull, and still nothing doing because Hamilton's car down the straight is almost unmatched. So as we were saying, we could have a lot of driver roller coaster moves in 2022. Expecting Hamilton to stay on, expecting Verstappen to stay on at Red Bull. What will Red Bull do with the second driver is the question. I think if you're thinking like me, you probably stick with Perez. He's had a really good start to the year. We're expecting Ferrari to stick with Charles and Carlos Sainz. McLaren will most likely stick with Norris and Ricciardo. Alpine will stick most likely with Alonso and Ocon. Aston Martin will stick with Stroll, but what will become of Vettel? I think Vettel is a multi-year deal, so they'll stick as well. It's really the midfield. It's Alfa Romeo, HAAS, Williams, isn't it? Where seats are looking to move around. Maybe Jackson could be Latifi's teammate at Williams next year if he does well enough, which I think he really is at the moment. He's beating George Russell, believe it or not, on two or three occasions already this season. That's going to be good. If he can get ahead of Russell, then that's really all. Max is looking a lot closer on the final lap here. And nope, nothing. He cannot pass Lewis Hamilton. It looks like the race is going to go to Lewis Hamilton to continue the conversation before we end this race. Russell could be signed by Mercedes to replace Bottas, which could lead to Jackson being in a Williams seat, and Nikita Mazepin will then drive the HAAS. No doubt he was demoted to third driver for a controversial media video on social media. He was dropped to third driver as punishment, and most likely, if Jackson does go to Williams, which some say he will, to replace Russell, Nikita Mazepin will be in that HAAS for next year. And we watch this battle on the final lap. It looks like Lewis Hamilton is going to take it today. Max Verstappen has thrown everything at Lewis Hamilton. We want more battles like this. Lewis Hamilton round the final corner of this race, and Lewis Hamilton is going to make it 2 out of 3. It's a hat-trick for Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton wins the Portuguese Grand Prix, chased home all the way by Max Verstappen. Fastest lap on the final lap by Lewis Hamilton on that set of hard tyres. And that'll be an extra point that he will gladly appreciate as we watch Norris and Leclerc coming across the line. Looks like Norris is going to score another podium for McLaren in a resurgent weekend for both McLaren and Ferrari. Pierre Gasly will take 6th behind Sainz, Vettel, Tsunoda, Alonso and Ricciardo third or top 10. Lewis Hamilton wins it, and boy does that one mean a lot. You can tell in his celebration that means a lot to Lewis Hamilton. It's the battle he has relished for years, and he strikes the first blow today at Portimao. Still a long way to go, but that is a win that Lewis Hamilton earned, and why he is on the verge of becoming the greatest of all time if he can take his 8th World Championship. In me personally, my opinion, he's already there. He's already taken the poles and podiums and wins record all from Michael Schumacher, but to win that 8th, oh boy, that would solidify it, wouldn't it? Lewis Hamilton wins from Max Verstappen and a podium for Lando Norris. It's been a resurgent weekend for Ferrari, another 4-5 for them. Aiden Jackson really just fell off, sadly, after the round of stops, but still finished P14 to be fair, which is better than where he started, and he had a great first lap as well. Perez and Bottas being your only retirements. Oh boy, this season Lewis Hamilton now a race win clear of Valtteri Bottas, with Bottas not scoring. Max Verstappen's still got a bit to do to rein him in, but there's still another 17 rounds to go and anything can happen. Wow, Lewis Hamilton now with a race win over the pack behind him after winning 2 out of the opening 3 races, with Bottas taking the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Aiden Jackson ahead of Schumacher and Latifi in the points. The big movers in the constructors, AlphaTauri with a great 6th for Pierre Gasly and more points for Tsunoda. It's vintage Mercedes win again, but this time Lewis was pushed home by Max Verstappen. Thank you for watching. We will see you for the Spanish Grand Prix. It wasn't a classic, but sure, Max Verstappen gave Hamilton a chance to see what he could be in for the rest of the season. Goodbye everybody, we'll see you in Barcelona.